Hi, Alex here, and in this video I want to talk about the 4 things I think about and you should be thinking about as well before taking any picture. I'm specifically talking about camera settings and selecting the proper mode for the correct situation. I've also created a cheat sheet that you can download and print to take with you as a memory aid for this topic. Now this is kind of a follow-up topic to my shutter aperture ISO video, so I'll include that video on the download page as well. And in case someone embedded or shared this video elsewhere, I'll tell you at the end where you can download the cheat sheet and the video. Okay, enough with the formalities, let's get to it. The 4 things I think about is motion, depth of field, light, and white balance. Let me just get white balance out of the way first because it's less important. If you're not capturing images in RAW format, make sure you have the correct white balance set, especially if you're changing locations between pictures. Like for example, if you're going from outside sunlight to inside a room, or changing rooms as you'd be doing if you were shooting an event like a wedding, for example. So think about white balance because there might be different type of lights in different rooms. On the other hand, if you're shooting in RAW format, it's pretty much not important because you can change white balance to its full range after the picture has been taken in a photo editing program, and I'll do a separate video for that. Having said that, I still want to get correct white balance in camera, even if I'm shooting in RAW format. However, about 95% of the time, I'll leave the camera in auto white balance. So think about white balance. It's very important if you're not shooting in RAW. Alright, let's get back to the more important settings. Whenever I look at a scene, I think of these 3 things and in what way I want to capture the scene. First, I ask myself, is there motion and do I want to capture motion blur? Second, I ask, is this a portrait or landscape? And how much depth of field do I want? Remember, depth of field is the thing that'll get you the blurry backgrounds. And finally, is there enough light? And how much can I push the ISO before I start hating the noise or having to add artificial light, like flash for example? Let's explore motion first. If there's a scene where there's motion involved, for example fast moving vehicles, sports, or maybe you're trying to capture an image of your kid running around, basically any situation where there's motion, either the subject, the camera moving around, or a combination of both. In this situation, I'll set the camera into shutter priority mode and select shutter speeds that will capture what creative effect I'm trying to accomplish. If I want to freeze motion, I'll go for fast shutter speeds. If I want motion blur, I'll set slow shutter speeds. But shutter priority mode is what I want to set on the mode dial for this type of a situation. For the second scenario, I ask myself, is this a portrait or landscape, and how much depth of field do I want to capture? For this situation, I'll set the camera into aperture priority mode. If I have a landscape, I'll set small aperture settings in order to capture crisp focus and clarity over large distances. On the other hand, if I want to isolate the subject in a portrait shot from the background, I'll set large aperture settings in order to get that blurred background. Now be careful of this because it's easy to overdo it. If you're going too much with a blurred background, and for example you have a group where there might be some people behind others, or maybe they're positioned at a slight angle from the camera's point of view, you want to set an appropriate depth of field setting as to capture clarity for all the subjects in your picture. And finally, the lighting conditions. If there's too much light or too little light, I'll think about what I need to do with the ISO, either decrease it or increase it in order not to exceed the camera's limitations. Because you can only dial the shutter and aperture so much before they reach their limit. Once the limit is reached on shutter or aperture, either one or both, you'll start getting unwanted creative side effects, motion blur or depth of field. You might also notice changes in exposure, which is the picture coming out too bright or too dark. So you'll have to use ISO to give you flexibility for the shutter and aperture range limits so you can maintain acceptable exposure. With all the wonderful features on modern cameras, there also comes a time when you reach the camera's limitations in all 3, shutter, aperture, and ISO, at which point you either can't take the picture or you have to start thinking outside the box by adding external lights or filters to block excessive lighting. But that's a different topic which I cover fully in the DSLR Blueprint training course. That's it. That's kind of my thought process, and those are the 4 things that I think about before taking any picture. There should be a link on this page to download this PDF cheat sheet. So click download that, print it, and take it with you in the field when you practice. I'll see you in the next video.